سمندر
أنت من للهدى مصدر
وسيوطاتها هنا
يا حيد إلك إيد تنجي الندى محتار.
At-Tahdhib is based on the 400 fundamentals. All of these great works of hadith, which form the corpus of our hadith collections and therefore our jurisprudence and our theology, are based on the 400 fundamentals, and the vast majority of the 400 fundamentals are written by students of Imam As-Sadiq alayhi salam, which again illustrates the pivotal, central position of As-Sadiq min Ali Muhammad, the truthful Imam, the descendant of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alih, which in a way, and I want you to think about this long and hard, Imam As-Sadiq revived the transmission and collection and compilation of hadith, starting with the Holy Prophet, may God's peace and everlasting blessings be upon him and upon his family, all the way to his father Imam Al-Bāqir. Imam As-Sadiq revived this tradition. Imam As-Sadiq gave new life to the idea that hadith is important. The thing that the Quran talks about in plain words, لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ مَا نُزِّلَ إِلَيْهِمْ. God says that we have sent this book and we have sent you so that you would teach the people what has been revealed to them. So in order to do that, Imam As-Sadiq began to train disciples and companions and students who would carry this tradition forward and who would transmit the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt far and wide.
In order to transmit these teachings, the Imam pursued a complex approach similar to those of his forefathers. While he focused on teaching some of his closest companions the secrets and knowledge of Al-Muhammad, he also established and renewed the University of the Ahlul Bayt, where thousands of Muslim students were taught all kinds of sciences that they were not familiar with earlier. Researchers who study the life of Imam As-Sadiq say that the Islamic civilization and the golden age of Islam owes its progress, advancement and knowledge to Imam As-Sadiq, for the amounts of knowledge that he passed on to his students in the various fields, many of whom became world renowned, such as Jabir ibn Hayyan, the father of chemistry. According to historians like Ibn Uqda al-Hamdani, a reliable scholar of chains of narration, Imam As-Sadiq apparently had over 4,000 students scattered across the Muslim worlds, all of who claimed to be students of Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad As-Sadiq.
The other example is Aban ibn Taghlib al-Kufi. Aban was such a close companion of Imam As-Sadiq and had spent so much time with him, learning from him, that when he died in the lifetime of Imam As-Sadiq, the Imam famously declared, أَوْجَعَ قَلْبِي مَوْتُ Aban. The death of Aban aches my heart. This man had memorized 30,000 hadiths, 30,000 quotes and narrations from his teacher Imam As-Sadiq alayhi salam. Now, I say this because if you have 4,000 students, one of whom is Aban ibn Taghlib, who had memorized 30,000 hadiths, imagine how much knowledge Imam As-Sadiq left. 30,000 is almost twice as many hadiths as the blessed book of Al-Kafi, which forms the bedrock of our traditions from the Prophet and his immaculate household. Another example is a man by the name of Al-Hasan ibn Ali al-Washā. Al-Hasan al-Washā was not a narrator of hadith directly from Imam As-Sadiq alayhi salam. Rather, he's considered among the narrators of the era of Imam al-Kadhim and Imam al-Ridha alayhim as-salam. This person one day receives an individual from Bilad al-Ray, modern day Iran. This person came to him and he said that I have been told you are famous for having heard from Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam through intermediaries. You've heard traditions of Imam Al-Sadiq from some of his students. And I'd like to hear those traditions from you. So Al-Hasan Al-Washā told him, I am busy today. Why don't you come back tomorrow and we could sit and I could share what I've learned. So that man who had come from Ray, which is a fair distance to Medina, or Kufa rather, where Al-Hasan Al-Washā was from, he said to him, no, I have no guarantees that I will be alive until tomorrow. So I'd like you to share with me what you have learned today. Al-Hasan Al-Washā told him, had I known that there would be people like you who are so eager to learn the traditions of Jaʿfar ibn Muḥammad and al-Ṣādiq, لَاسْتَكْثَرْتُ مِنْ ذَلِكَ. I would have put in more effort to acquire the traditions of Imam al-Sadiq. Now that I know I have seekers like you who are so eager. And the relevant part is this. He says, because I entered the masjid of Kufa and I saw 900 people teaching others, كُلٌّ يَقُولْ حَدَّثَنِي جعفر ibn Muḥammad. Now, let's try and take a few steps back here to understand exactly what's happening. Al-Hasan ibn Ali al-Washā is saying that I encountered 900 individuals, each of whom was teaching their own class. They had their own students, their own circle of scholarship, and they were each quoting Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam. 900 classes. What a university is this? Have you ever come across a university that has 900 classes, and that in each of those classes, the professor, the teacher, is quoting none other than Jaʿfar ibn Muḥammad and al-Sadiq alayhi salam? Now, to illustrate just how amazing this really is, you need to take into account and contextualize the fact that this was in Masjid al-Kufa. Now, what does that mean? It means that had Al-Hasan ibn Ali said that I saw people in the mosque of the Prophet, 900 individuals, no less, who were transmitting the hadiths of Imam Al-Sadiq, that would have been strange and amazing enough. But he's saying that I have seen this in the mosque of Kufa. Now, Imam Al-Sadiq did not live in Kufa. Imam Al-Sadiq spent the bulk of his life in Medina. He was born in Medina and he was buried in Medina in the garden of Baqi'. What was he doing in Kufa exactly? Well, Imam Al-Sadiq, when the first Abbasid caliph by the name of Abu al-Abbas al-Saffah, when he assumed power after the end of the Umayyad dynasty, he became the Khalifa. He was stationed in Kufa. He summoned Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam to go to Kufa so that he could have him under his control and under his watchful eyes. Imam Al-Sadiq ended up spending 2 years in the city of Kufa. In other words, Imam Al-Sadiq only spent 2 years in Kufa. And yet in those 2 years, he trained 900 students who would then go on to teach their own classes in all fields, in all disciplines, in all different sciences. Each one saying, حَدَّثَنِي جعفر ibn Muḥammad alayhi salam.
The knowledge of Imam Al-Sadiq was not unknown to people. Even those who had animosity towards the Imam or who disagreed with him understood his immense knowledge and contributions. Nonetheless, over the years, endless campaigns were launched against the Ahlul Bayt and their teachings. The scholars of the Shia were killed, and the books of the Shia were burned, thrown into rivers, and hadith and mainstream books were changed and even interpreted differently. As a result, there was extreme amounts of censorship against the knowledge of the Ahlul Bayt that took place by the rulers at the time, and even in contemporary times. This has contributed to many people, amongst the other schools of thought, not knowing Imam Al-Sadiq and knowing his message. It then becomes our duty to lift this veil of censorship and to reintroduce the Imam and his contributions to the public.
Now, when we want to introduce Imam Al-Sadiq to people that have no familiarity with the Imam, what we do is we could use the words of prominent figures that they are familiar with to introduce Imam Al-Sadiq to them. We come to the likes of Malik ibn Anas. Now, Malik ibn Anas was the founder of the Maliki school of thought. Now, Malik ibn Anas, he wasn't a follower of Imam Al-Sadiq. If anything, he's an opponent of Imam Al-Sadiq. He has his own school of thought. And yet, when he talks about Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam, because he's met with the Imam more than once, he says, مَا رَأَتْ عَيْنٌ, no eyes has ever seen, and no ear has ever heard, and no mind has ever comprehended or began to imagine someone greater than Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam in three main areas. The first area, in knowledge. So Malik ibn Anas here says that there is no one that comes close to Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam when it comes to knowledge. Number two, taqwa. Again, this is a Quranic criteria. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. The best amongst you is the one that is God conscious more than the others. So Malik ibn Anas knows that Imam Sadiq was God conscious. He wasn't in pursuit of worldly desires. He was capable of pursuing all the worldly desires. He had the opportunity to satisfy all his desires, but he refused. This is why he says that you can't find a person that has more taqwa than Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Also, he says that you wouldn't find someone who worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala better than Imam Al-Sadiq. And even though the Imam had many roles that he was playing, first of all, he assumed a leadership role. He had tens of thousands of followers during his time. And the Imam was a teacher. And the Imam was